Gonna move the camera over a little bit because I like it. I don't know. Cup check. The St. Louis Blues win 3-2 in overtime in Game 2 of the 2019 Stanley Cup Final. That is their first ever win in the Stanley Cup Final. But the past is the past. Let's talk about now. The series is now tied 1-1. Let's talk about it. I'm so dumb. This is why you should pick a position and just stick to it. Because heading into the series, I thought the Bruins were going to win the whole thing, but I thought it was going to be a long 6 or 7 game series. Still might be. On the podcast, Adam Wilde said no. I believe he said it was going to be a 5 game series. Still might be. But with the way this game started for the Blues, man, did I think this series was done. Because after Game 1, the Blues could have still felt okay about their Game 1. It was tight even though they took 5 penalties and only allowed 1 power play goal. What's the homework for Game 2? Dum-dum, take fewer penalties. Less than 5 minutes in, Sammy Blake crashing the net, goaltender interference on Tuukka Rask. Although, that's a tough one. Because for sure, you want to be a lot more disciplined than you were in Game 1. But what are you supposed to do? Just take your foot off the pedal entirely? You gotta crash the net a little bit. And I don't really think Sammy Blake could have stopped. But he went into Tuukka hard enough that, sorry, it's goaltender interference. The Blues took 3 penalties in this one, and 2 of them were for goalie interference. The game plan was obvious. And on the ensuing power play, it takes less than a minute for Boston. Jake DeBrusk just wheeling around the corner, throws it in front to a wide open Charlie Coyle. There's no reason for him to be that wide open. Squeaks through the wickets of Jordan Binnington. It's a 1-0 game less than 5 minutes in. Sloppy discipline, sloppy defense, sloppy goaltending, all in the first 5 minutes. How are you gonna win this one? TD Garden's going nuts because it's Charlie. Even though the Blues look okay right out of the gate, they get a few shots, a couple scoring chances. That's the result, man. If they make more mistakes than you, but you make the bigger ones, you're gonna have a bad time. So the Blues need to tighten up, for sure, but they need a bounce. Still less than 10 minutes into the first, they get it. Sustained pressure in the Bruins zone, getting shots, getting their own rebound, passing it around, cycling it. Robert Bortuzzo just throws it on? Really? Okay, his second of the playoffs ties the game at 1. It looked like it might have been Patrick Maroon's goal for a minute, and he's roughing up after the play, but it was deflected in front by a Bruins defender. But Maroon's effort in front was instrumental in this play, and this is sort of what I was talking about last video. The Blues took 5 penalties. They weren't able to get their lines out the way they wanted to. And Patrick Maroon played, I want to say, less than 9 minutes. Just checked 8 minutes and 59 seconds, yeah. In this game, he was physical early and often. He's beaking at the bench, and he plays over 15 minutes. Yes, there was overtime, but there wasn't that much overtime. And Craig Berube, who's nominated for Coach of the Year, was able to have a little bit more flexibility because his team was behaving themselves. About 30 or 40 seconds later, forget clearing the zone, the Blues can't decide which one of them wants the puck. All the chances in the world to clear it. Give the Bruins credit for applying pressure, but holy smokes. Once again, the Blues forget that the front of the net is a place. And once again, Jordan Binnington is beaten a little bit too easily. Joachim Nordstrom this time. And just like that, the Bruins are back on top. A little over 5 minutes to go in the first. We're still in the first, by the way. The Blues get another bounce. Pastrnak tries to clear the puck to the point. I don't know if it just died in the boards or if it touched the ref's skate, but it wasn't able to get to the point with the speed that Pastrnak thought. Tarasenko and Schwartz, like that, they're on it. Chara's in full retreat. Marchand tries to get to Tarasenko, but he can't take away the pass. It gets to Schwartz. He's got speed and space. Schwartz shoots, stopped by Rask. Juicy rebound. Tarasenko robbed until he bats in his own rebound, and it's a tied game again. It's funny, after the first Bruins goal, I tweeted, yeah, no, this isn't gonna be close. And I had a Blues fan chirp me, hey, unlike the Leafs, the Blues are resilient. You know, Game 1 was broadcasted in Canada, like I saw that, right? But this play was that. It was fast, it was opportunistic, it was tenacious. Tarasenko does not give up on that puck, and he's rewarded for it. And Tuukka Rask is a good goalie. He's probably gonna stop the first one, maybe even the second. The third, you make it hard. And that's when things fall apart for the Bruins. The talk of the game, it wouldn't be a game in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs without a controversial hit that we're all yelling and screaming at each other about. Oskar Sundqvist drills Matt Grzelcyk into the end boards, and Grzelcyk leaves the game. You know who didn't leave the game? Oskar Sundqvist. He got a 2-minute minor. That's it. So if the Bruins can't capitalize on that 2-minute minor, which they couldn't, that's a huge swing for them. The Blues get to keep a player. The Bruins lose not just any player, a defenseman, and a good one. So, was it dirty? Should someone get suspended? This little back and forth from Twitter was trippy because it's a former Bruin and a former Blue arguing. The Bruin took the Bruins side and the Blue took the Blues side. From PJ Stock, Wow, that's a 5-minute major in any league at any time. How many more nights like this can the NHL allow? Cam Jansen responds, he changed direction. He was already committed to the hit. 2 minutes. Now, before I get to the third tweet, there's Stock's opinion, there's Jansen's. Now, I gotta watch what I say because Cam Jansen follows me and he's got fists made of fists. But as a Leaf fan, I was like, Thomas Kaberle didn't change direction. People don't forget. I disagree with Jansen's interpretation of that play. I think there's a difference between being committed to a hit and being committed to contact. Hockey's ridiculously fast. You can't just slam on the brakes all the time. You're gonna have contact. But if you watch the replay, it seemed like contact was inevitable for Sundqvist and Grzelcyk, but Sundqvist committed to the hit a little late in the game. And I think PJ Stock nails it here. His back numbers were always present. There was never a shoulder to hit. He shouldn't have committed to it without a clean option. D in wrong position didn't mean he should be hit from behind and to the head. That to me is the key here. At no point does Grzelcyk give up a shoulder. It's always the nameplate. And this is when the chicken and egg conversation about safety in the corners comes up. Well, Grzelcyk shouldn't have done that. You gotta protect yourself in the corners. Well, okay, why? What do you mean why? Someone might deck you from behind. Ah! That they might. You're right. You're right. It is in my best interest to protect myself. That does not mean you're allowed to hit from behind. Stop trying to turn hockey into soccer. Dude, this playoffs, I'm trying to turn hockey into hockey. Hockey is a sport with rules and no one's following them. This, to me, was a hit from behind. It was an avoidable one. And the fact that it was to the head to boot, I think Sundqvist is getting suspended. It's a Stanley Cup final, so if a playoff game is worth 2 regular season games and a final game is worth 4 regular, there's that stupid made-up math that they have. My bet is Sundqvist gets one game. And if you think that's harsh, who knows if Grzelcyk's gonna be back. So even though he wasn't kicked out, that is the Blues' second of the game. Second penalty. In the second period, the penalties were 2 apiece. Technically, they were 3 for the Bruins because 1 was a double minor. But forget the Bruins. In game 1, they were fine. The Blues now have 4 penalties through 2 periods, which means through the first 5 periods of the Stanley Cup final, they have 9. They've gotta get that figured out, man. Luckily for them, this second period was an inverse of the one in game 1. The Bruins stomped the Blues, kicked them up and down the ice in the second period of game 1, outshooting them 18-3. In this second period, shots 14-6 for the Blues. Grzelcyk only played about 14 minutes in game 1, but losing him, a defenseman, and so early in the game puts huge stress on the Bruins decor. And the Blues wear away at them and wear away at them, and the Bruins, they put up a good fight. The shots were 9-9 in the third, but the supports are shaken. Connor Clifton played 16:47, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's up at least 3 minutes from what he played last game. Brandon Carlo, almost 23 minutes. Zdeno Chara, almost 26 minutes. Torrey Krug, actually 26 minutes, and Charlie McAvoy 27. A lot of the talk I saw on Twitter was about how the Bruins' top line wasn't very good, and yeah, it would have been huge for them to step it up in this situation. But if they don't have it, and the Bruins are at a disadvantage because they're playing with 5 defensemen, something's got to give unless they get a bounce. And you can't get a bounce if you don't shoot, which the Bruins didn't. They didn't get a single shot in overtime. The shots were 4-0 for the Blues. But I'm burying the lead here. Enough about the Bruins. Let's talk about the Blues a bit. Let's talk about guys being dudes. After the game, this little story came out. From Stephen Wino, Oscar Sundqvist, pauses for boos and hisses from Bruins fans, said Carl Gunnarsson saw Craig Berube in the pisser, quote unquote, between the third and overtime and told him all he needed was another chance. Asked by reporter Chris if he believed Gunnarsson saying all he needed was another chance because he'd never scored a playoff OT goal, Craig Berube said, "I liked hearing it." Asked by Frank Saravalli if this one more chance line to Berube happened at the pisser, Gunnarsson says, "I can't deny that. That's where it happened. That makes it even more fun, I guess." What did he actually tell Craig Berube? He was going to stop it with the piss-poor effort? He was going to make some wee adjustments? He was going to make some nice cross-stream passes out there? We should just get to the game. In overtime, less than 4 minutes in, the Bruins have a delayed penalty call. Blues keep possession, Oscar Sundqvist is on the ice, and they're working it around. Gunnarsson with the puck at the point, doesn't quite like what he sees, sends it over to O'Reilly, gets it back, blasts taps it, and that's a goal. And that's a game. And that is Carl Gunnarsson's first ever playoff goal, meaning that was his first goal in 57 career NHL playoff games. And I'm looking at his elite prospects page. It doesn't look like he ever played in the playoffs in the American Hockey League, going way back over 10 years to his SHL days in Sweden. In 38 games, 0 playoff goals. Actually, Gunnarsson's last, and as far as I can tell from his elite prospects page, only other playoff goal came in the 2005-2006 season when he was with, help me out, Linköping HC J20. So I guess that means Swedish Junior. And then it's even got stats from when he was 17, 16 years old. That website's nuts. No goals in the playoffs. So that was Gunnarsson's first career NHL playoff goal. And as far as I can tell, his first playoff goal at any level of hockey in 13 years. Stay hydrated, Carl. It sounds like you're going to be heading to the pisser a lot more often. And forget his personal first. This is the St. Louis Blues' first ever Stanley Cup final win. And it was well earned, outshooting the Bruins 37-23. They still took 5 minors though. They gotta clean that up. And a little bit of comfort for Bruins fans from Pete Blackburn. Bruins played like crap and had 5 defensemen, and it still went to OT. And that's sort of how I felt for the Blues after game 1. They played like garbage, I thought, and it still came down to the final minute. And not quite in this fashion, but I did sort of call the beginning of this series. I said it'd be high scoring, which no, not really, although the first periods have been bananas. The Bruins have given up 4 first period goals over 2 games. That's not good. But the play, sloppy. Sloppy leads to defensive breakdowns, scoring chances, and oftentimes penalties, and sometimes dangerous ones. And despite the 2 sloppy games, the Blues managed to split the 2 games in Boston and steal home ice advantage. And now, maybe with the series tightening up a little bit, the Blues have the next 2 games on their own home ice. If they can find a way to stay out of the box less than 5 times per game, we might hear back-to-back glorious. But will they? That is the question. Speaking of which, questions. Have the Blues seized the momentum in the series? Is there any fear now in that Bruins dressing room? I would definitely say that the Blues have seized momentum in the series. There's no fear in that Bruins dressing room. They were down 2-1 to the Leafs, 3-2 to the Leafs. In Game 6, they were down, came back, won that game, won Game 7. In the second round, they were down 2-1 to Columbus. They won that one in 6. Obviously, they swept the Hurricanes. This is just a regular day for the Bruins. And one thing you gotta respect about their journey so far is despite the sweep against Carolina, it hasn't been a cakewalk and they've had to overcome adversity. And being tied in a playoff series is hardly adversity. They've seen worse than this. How about that Gunnarsson-Pollock trade? How about you pay for my next therapy session? We'll end with this one. What are the chances we see Pastrnak move to the second line to play with Krejci and DeBrusk? The top 6 needs to change one way or another, and a lot of Bruins fans and analysts have been talking about this change for a while. I'm 100% on board with the Bruins doing that. I think it'd be smart, and we know that because it's worked. I keep going back to the Leaf series because I obviously watched it very closely, but that top line was struggling mightily early in that series, and all Bruce Cassidy did, took Pastrnak off that line, dropped him to the second line. I think it was Danton Heinen took his place. And I'm pretty sure halfway through the game, he just switched it back anyway, and it turns out that that's all that they needed. Just a little kick, a reminder, you know? It's probably the perfect time for it too. You're heading out on the road, you don't have the matchup, you might as well spread out your talent. Last thing I want to mention before I go, well actually 2 things. One, I got a video coming up on the Sportsnet YouTube channel that I can't wait for you to see. I got to go to NBA Finals Media Day. I was definitely a little out of my comfort zone, but I really loved it. And in typical me fashion, I got to interview this guy somehow. Shanny! Brendan Shanahan. I know, yes, at NBA Finals. Yes, Brendan Shanahan. Life is silly. 2, for the book tour, I am happy to announce that I am going to Vancouver June 22nd. It's going to be after day 2 of the draft, and it's going to be at Regal Beagle, if you know the place. More details to come, I'm just telling you now so that you can book it off or whatever you need to do. Is that all the housekeeping? I think that's all the housekeeping. So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends that Carl Gunnarsson is a Blue.